What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walk of Shame. It's your man Ant Walker here to talk about UFC on ESPN 6, I think is the formal title. UFC Boston, of course, is just what we've been calling it on Twitter all day and what I called it for the title of this video. So let me make sure that we are in fact live, and I'm going to put out the word that we're live on Twitter, and then we will get to talking. All right, so let's get right into it. We just saw Dominick Reyes get the biggest win of his career by far, knocking out Chris Weidman in the first round. I mean, get the official time, but I didn't write it down when they were announcing. So 1 minute 43 seconds into the first round, and that's a wrap, son. Chris Weidman goes to sleep relatively quickly. I mean, Reyes looked like he didn't even crack a sweat. That was we've seen a lot of middleweights going up to 205 in hopes of reinvigorating their careers. And we saw it work very well for Anthony Smith. Granted, he did lose to John Jones, but he was able to defeat Alexander Gustafsson since then. Thiago Santos had a nice run at 205 before he faced John Jones and ultimately lost in what was one of the more hotly contested decisions of the year. This time, just not it. Just not it. I mean, this was much more of the Luke Rockhold style of moving up to 205. And you know what? And maybe that isn't a fair comparison. I mean, both gentlemen did get knocked out. But for Rockhold, it seemed to be more of an issue of him just not having good striking defense. To consistently just have bad defense when punches are being thrown at him, and no sort of growth in that department. Chris Weidman, on the other hand, from a technical standpoint, has pretty much all the skills I think necessary to run the table for the most part at 205. The problem is now he's gone through so many wars. His body has been so riddled with injury. He's taken so much damage that we're not looking at the same Chris Weidman. The same guy who smashed Vitor Belfort, who had that incredible fight with Lyoto Machida, the guy who dethroned Anderson Silva, that man does not exist any longer. And I think this showed it. Chris Weidman probably should have made this move, I'd say 3-4 years ago, maybe sooner. You know, you can't just erase the mileage on your chin and on your body by not doing the weight cut. You know, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So as far as what's next for Chris Weidman, I don't know, man. I don't know. I wonder if he's going to attempt to go back down to 185 at this point. I can't imagine him. I don't know, man. I don't know, because the thing about Chris Weidman, a guy who reached the top, who was one of the pound for pound best in the world, who did dethrone the greatest middleweight of all time, and got fantastic wins over other great middleweights. It's just, it doesn't seem like he'd be a guy who wanted to, at this age, with this much time under his shoulder, just, get to the back of the line and put on the hard hat and grab his lunch pail and say, let's get back to work. Like, that doesn't seem like something that makes sense for someone who's achieved the heights that he's achieved. There was somewhat a slight appetite for a Chris Weidman versus John Jones fight. And yes, it was a slight appetite, and I will definitely emphasize slight. But there was some history there. We know that Chris Weidman was very close to signing to Bellator as a light heavyweight before he got on the UFC roster. There was also, granted, and imagine if he ran things over at Bellator's light heavyweight division, that's a fight we would have wanted to see. Jones and Weidman. Then also, before he had his career-defining moment against Anderson Silva, he was actually trying to step in on short notice to fight John Jones in what was supposed to be UFC 151. He was one of the few guys that raised their hand and said, let's do it. And at that time, that would have been an excellent fight to see. But, I mean, after this result, I don't think there's any appetite for it. It's kind of like, even if he were to right the ship, does anybody want to see it? I'm looking at some names in the chat, so I'm gonna shout them out. Rob Iman, thanks for joining as always, man. Says he's here with his chainsaw tonight. I know you got some cuts to make. Cole Shelton, yes, Cole, I will address your comment in just a moment. We do have some issues we need to discuss. But I'm seeing what's up, Tommaso Mark, also in the chat. I'm seeing some comments on the chat saying that it's time for Chris Weidman to retire. I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that one bit. This man has had a great career. He's had a fantastic career. Let's just run down the list of names that he has defeated and what he's accomplished in his career. Granted, we'll start earlier before we go up to his more recent fight. So, had that late notice fight against Damian Maia where he cut like 30 pounds in a week or something insane like that. Wasn't the most exciting fight in the world, but a very, very meaningful victory at that time. Mark Munoz, one of the most egregious late stoppages of all time that people seem to forget about, where he caught Munoz with the elbow coming in and he was out, and want to say it was Josh Rosenthal that was standing there just watching Weidman blast his head into the ground. The aforementioned Anderson Silva fights, Lyoto Machida, Vitor Belfort. Those are marquee names that he has to his credit. Now, granted, after that, a lot less success. The loss to Luke Rockhold, a fight which had he not thrown that crazy spinning back kick, we might be talking about a different trajectory of the middleweight division. And then that's when those injuries started popping up, because he had that canceled bout that was supposed to be the rematch against Rockhold, ended up going to Bisping for UFC 199. And he had that loss to Yoel Romero at UFC 205, I believe it was, where he got flying kneed into oblivion. The Mousasi loss that had the tinge of controversy because of the confusion over the so-called unified rules and kneeing a downed opponent to the head. The Kelvin Gastelum win, the last time he won, and Kelvin Gastelum, being a challenger for the interim title, somebody who could very well find himself back in a title fight in the middleweight division. That victory stands. You look at the Jacare fight, his last fight before this one at UFC 230, where he was slickly outboxing Jacare to start that fight. He was getting in his business, and then he suddenly wasn't. Then he found himself looking up at the lights. When you start seeing these fighters have these great technical improvements, because maybe I have a skewed memory of what Chris Weidman's stand-up looked like before that Jacare fight, but I remember when that fight came on, and I was like, wow, I don't remember his hands being this crisp. I don't remember his stand-up looking this good. And then it was all for naught because he still got knocked out. I think when you start seeing things like this, when you start seeing guys technically have everything there, and then they still get knocked out, we got some questions. We got some questions to answer, some very tough questions. I'm still seeing traffic in the chat agreeing that, hey, it might be time for him to hang it up, and I'm not mad at that. I kind of want to see that as well. I'd rather not see Chris Weidman get put out to pasture by up-and-coming prospects over and over again, because that's probably what's going to happen next. Now I do see one person in the chat that is saying that they'd like to see Chris Weidman give it another go, and that's Tommaso, saying, I'd give Chris one more fight, not sure whether that's 205 or 185, but one more fight. If that's the case, he's got to take some time off. He's got to take a little bit to just reevaluate himself, see if this is what he really wants. Also going to be down for Whitaker versus Weidman, a passing the torch sort of fight. It's a fight that should have happened 2 years ago. But Whitaker versus Weidman, yes, that would have been a fantastic fight 2 years ago. But now, God, no, not now, not now. That's just if Robert Whitaker were able to get his hands on Chris Weidman, and I don't mean get his hands on like physically, touch him in the bout, but I mean they get booked to fight one another. They step in the cage together to compete against each other. Weidman gets washed. The chin isn't there. Whitaker would have the speed advantage. It's not like Weidman is going to have an easy time trying to grapple with Whitaker. Keep in mind, Whitaker was defending Yoel Romero takedowns on one leg in their first fight. Yeah, I can't sanction that one at all. Rob Weidman saying maybe Uriah Hall as a farewell for Weidman. I'm not mad at that. Those two do have a prior history. Uriah Hall was defeated by Chris Weidman, I believe, in Ring of Fire, a promotion that I think is now closed its doors as of earlier this year, based in the New Jersey area, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see, what else do we have in the chat here with Weidman? This is from Cole Shelton. With Weidman and Rockhold struggling, what does this mean for poor Jacare Souza making his 205 debut in a couple of weeks? I'm kind of thinking the same thing, man. Let me see here. I forget who Jacare is fighting here. I'm gonna look up that really, really quickly. Jan Blachowicz, the guy who took Rockhold out to pasture. That doesn't bode well for your man Jacare, in my opinion. In my humble opinion, that does not seem like the best set of circumstances for Jacare, especially given what we've seen from this top tier middleweight moving up. That's kind of crazy because Jacare has been through some of those same sort of wars. Shit, one of those wars was with Weidman. Him and Rockhold had a fantastic fight in Strikeforce. Wouldn't describe that as a war necessarily, but that was a great fight. That's a fight I wish they ran back. Maybe if anything, maybe you put Rockhold and Weidman back together, and if they want to do it at 185, if they want to do it at 205, whatever. Just so they can kind of speak their piece on that one. A fight like that makes sense. But Whitaker, I can't sanction that at all. I can't sanction that at all. So Cole, also with another great question, says, also, how weird is it Anthony Smith and Thiago Santos, barely top 15ers, having so much success at 205, while former champs in Rockhold and Weidman got brutally knocked out? I think that is kind of strange, but I understand why that's happening. Now, when you look at the careers of Anthony Smith and Thiago Santos, I think more so than Weidman and Rockhold, there was that narrative like, man, these guys might be really draining themselves to get down to 185, and they're not having the success that you would expect from guys with the athletic talents that they possess. I remember the first time that I met Thiago Santos. I believe it was at UFC 214. I think it was UFC 214. He was fighting, God, who was he fighting there? Whatever, I can't remember. But anyway, looking at him and thinking like, Jesus, how does this guy make 185? How is he ever weighed 185 pounds? Is nuts to me. Yeah, and then and I remember seeing him at, I think it was 227. In fact, I think this is my UFC 227 hat. When he fought Kevin Holland, and thinking like, man, this guy 185 just makes no sense. This is craziness. How is this guy at 185? When you see a guy like that, you think they're depleting so much of themselves and they have no success. So maybe if they put that weight back on, maybe then that will close some of the holes in what they do. Anthony Smith, I think also too, has had such like a journeyman style career that maybe he just happened to hit his stride just as he figured out that depleting himself that much to make middleweight was no longer worth it. That might have just been the perfect storm of circumstances for both of, if not, either one, if not both of those gentlemen. Now, Rockhold and Weidman had both reached the mountaintop. They both were, successful champions. Rockhold defended his belt a couple of times in Strikeforce. Weidman defended his belt in the UFC. Like, they had already kind of peaked as fighters as far as their development, for the most part, I should say. So when you go up to 205, less impact. And then on top of that, I think they've been through more wars. I mean, maybe Anthony Smith might be the exception. The thing is, I'll have to do a deep dive on Anthony Smith's career because it was such a journeyman career. A lot of it kind of floated under the radar. But we saw Weidman and Rockhold getting into battles with, especially Weidman, getting into battles with the absolute top of the line competition, with all-time greats that they were battling with, and it took its toll. So there it is, man. There it is. Well, so let's talk about Dominick Reyes. Let's talk about the guy who actually won the fight this evening. Now, Rob Iman saying, as for Reyes, give the man his title shot. I don't see anything wrong with that at this point. Before this fight, there was the narrative that we hadn't seen enough about Dominick Reyes, enough of him more, and especially after that Ozdemir fight, where it didn't live up to the expectations that a lot of people had. It was this question mark, like, what is he, what's going on here? Why is he, is he ready for this? And granted, I don't think he is ready. I do not think that Dominick Reyes is ready to fight someone the caliber of Jon Jones, but who is? Jon Jones is the most talented fighter that's ever walked the face of the earth. I'm sorry, like, nobody's ever just ready for that guy. But you can earn your spot, and that's the good thing about using meritocracy to decide these things. He has earned his spot at this point. You knock out a former middleweight champion, Chris Weidman, yeah, you earned your spot. Even if this isn't the Chris Weidman that we all know and love, we all remember for the great things he achieved. But Dominick Reyes is an undefeated fighter. He's an undefeated fighter with a resume of notable names now. I'll listen to some of the names that Dominick Reyes has done away with, that he's gotten his hand raised against. Jared Cannonier, does that man sound familiar to you? Is that man now not one of the scariest human beings at 185 right now? Before he got to that point, he lost to Dominick Reyes. Got finished in the first round, by the way. OSP, former title challenger. He should have won a knockout in that one because that knockout blow came right as the bell rung for the final round. Volkan Ozdemir, also a former title challenger. Wasn't the most exciting fight, but hey, he got his hand raised. That's what matters. And then you knock out Chris Weidman. Show me someone else at 205 that deserves this. And yes, maybe Jan Blachowicz. If he gets through Jacare, and especially the way he got through Rockhold, then yeah, I kind of hard to deny that man. But I think we now have two clear people that should be fighting Jon Jones. And that's more than we've had in quite some time. That's a lot more than we've had in quite some time. Like 205 actually might be somewhat exciting. Even if the ultimate prize is fighting a total killer like Jon Jones. All right, so let's jump in this chat here. So I'm also saying Jacare better pull out with an injury. MMA Watchdog saying Reyes versus Santos next. Man. At this point, there is so little at the top that looks like it might be remotely decent against Jon Jones at this point. You can't risk losing Reyes as a contender, especially against Thiago Santos. And by the way, Thiago Santos shouldn't even been thinking about fighting anytime soon. Like last I heard, his knees were completely blown out, like both of them, and he was going through some very, very serious rehab. I have a strong feeling that Thiago Santos is not going to ever be what he was that night at UFC 239. I just don't think he's going to be that guy ever again. But yeah, so I mean, Watchdog also saying USADA killed Weidman. I don't want to speculate on that. I mean, we definitely have some substance talk for later on in the show, and you guys know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I don't want to throw him in that category. I don't want to throw him in the Johnny Hendricks, Eric Silva, like USADA ruined who they were sort of thing. We'll leave that one alone. Okay, Tommaso saying there's nothing Walker can do to pass Reyes unless he kills Corey in 10 seconds. Other than that, Reyes earned his shot, whether you think he'll win or not. I agree with that. Like, as entertained as I have been by Johnny Walker, and I did get the privilege of being 30 feet away from Johnny Walker, trying who was it that he floored with the flying knee? Misha Serkinov. I was there for that, and man, it's fantastic. Like, Johnny Walker is such an electric personality that the UFC wants to get behind and promote, and they probably can do a fantastic job at promoting that man if they so chose to. But I do want to see a little bit more. I mean, he would really have to spark Corey Anderson, and that's not a guarantee. Corey Anderson is a very, very tough fighter. He may not be the one who's going to get you all riled up and excited, but jeez, man, that dude is a tough out. So I wouldn't go quite running. I wouldn't run to the betting table just so sure about Johnny Walker just yet. I think about that for a little bit. But yeah, man, Dominick Reyes has to be the guy right now. Jan Blachowicz maybe as well, but those are only two names that make sense to me. I can't see anyone else passing that test, in my opinion. Now let's go ahead and move on. I'm sure we'll circle back to some talk about what's next at light heavyweight, since a fight that clearly is going to have implications on the title picture just took place in the main event. But let's talk about that co-main event. Oh my Lord, that was exciting, beautiful, wonderful, violent chaos. That was what we watched mixed martial arts for. That was a fantastic fight. So Yair Rodriguez wins the decision over Jeremy Stephens. All the judges gave it 29-28. That was also my scorecard. Now, I did see some talk on Twitter about why wasn't any round score, why was that second round scored a 10-8, or there were no 10-8 rounds. The second round was definitely on its way to being a 10-8 round until Stephens recovered and went through his flurry. So I know there was some debate on the broadcast about, who's, if I'm not mistaken, it was debate on the broadcast, like who's that second round, like, Rodriguez was ahead earlier, and then he lost some momentum, and and Stephens was swarming him toward the end of it. Like, nah, buddy. Rodriguez was dangerously close to finishing him for a large portion of that round. He was destroying him for that round. That body kick was god-awful to watch. Just the thing, if you've never been kicked to the liver, trust me, it sucks. It really sucks, and it'll put you on your ass before you know it. So, to absorb that kick and then get ground and pounded to the point where I think some refs would have stopped it. I probably would not have, but a lot of refs probably would have stepped in and stopped that, and they wouldn't have been wrong for it necessarily. There have been much worse stoppages than that. There have been a lot worse stoppages than that. So, but yeah, man, for him to endure that and then come back at the end of that round, he saved it from being a 10-8. He then upgraded it to a 10-9 for Rodriguez. And then he clearly won the last round. So I think the judges got it right. 29-28 sounds about right. Now, from a technical standpoint, man, it seemed very clear very early on. I mean, I think we said the same thing when they first fought for 15 seconds before the eye poke a few weeks back, that Rodriguez seemed to clearly have a speed advantage. I mean, it was like instantaneous. Like, man, you blink and his foot is up toward Stephens' head, and and he's moving around and stuff like that. However, when you are that explosive, when you are that much reliant on fast twitch muscles, man, it don't last long, does it? It certainly does not last that long. And we saw him tire out, and I think especially trying to get that finish in the second round. We've seen Yair Rodriguez go the distance in a 5-rounder before. The Korean Zombie fight, obviously, and the Bruce Leroy fight, the Alex Caceres fight, went 5 rounds. So yeah, that we've seen that happen before. So he has the gas tank to last 5 rounds. But when you have the combination of fast twitch reliance in your style and all your speed and your explosive movements and power strikes, when that is your game plan, and then that second round you're so close to that finish and you are just unloading, at this frenetic pace, yeah, you're probably going to tire out. And Jeremy Stephens, since he has dropped to 145, has done such a fantastic job of turning that same narrative around, because that was one of the knocks on him when he was a lightweight. And now at featherweight, he can last and he can sustain a pace for longer. And Stephens just started gaining the momentum. And quite frankly, both of those gentlemen are lucky they were not finished. They were both very fortunate to not get finished in that fight. And I think the slightest adjustments that either one could have made probably would have finished it. If Yair wasn't chasing that front headlock and guillotine, I think it was a front headlock to a guillotine, and I think he tried a Darce choke in that second round. If he wasn't chasing those chokes and he forced Stephens to stand back up, probably would have finished him. If Stephens showed a little more patience, and I get it, his sense of urgency there, considering that he probably knew he was down, or at least speculated that he was down, to just kind of pounce on him. But if he had a bit more measured approach, perhaps he would have won. So I'm okay with him running this one back. I'm totally okay with running this one back. And I almost felt cheated when it was over with. Like, I want my 2 rounds. I want my extra 2 rounds. There was a reason why we were so excited about this fight. We were so excited for this fight. We were so pumped for this, for perfect reason, because it is a fantastic contest from an X's and O's standpoint. But those 2 rounds taken away, I think, really changed the action. It changed what could have been. So I wonder if you've got a 5-round fight, does Yair completely sell his soul in that second round, chasing that finish? Or does he hang back and let Stephens come to him more and continue doing work? Does Jeremy Stephens elect to slowly let him drown as the rounds go on if he's in the same position in the third round when you have an extra 2 attached? So there's some questions there I'd like answered. I would love to see them book this as a main event. Now, I know I actually see in the chat now, I see some calls for different fights, and I'm not mad at those calls. Rob, another great suggestion for matchmaking, says Rodriguez versus Jose Aldo should be next. Dude, sign me up for that fight. I like that. I like that fight a lot. That's just one of those cool things about featherweight. You can mix and match so many of these guys, and you will be very happy with the results. That fight sounds fantastic. That is one I probably will play on the UFC 3 game, because I didn't think of it until now. That's great. Stephens versus the loser of Calvin Kattar and Zabit. If Kattar loses, if Zabit loses that fight, I don't really care to see him and Stephens again. I think we can do without that matchup. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind if Kattar wins that one. I want to see him against Korean Zombie, but that's the fight I wanted to see before Zabit anyway. I wanted to see Zabit versus Yair, and then Korean Zombie versus Kattar. Let's see here. Tommaso asked thoughts on Duho Troy's return versus Charles Bourdais. Ask me that a little bit later, Tommaso. I want to get through some more of this card because there is a lot to talk about. And man, we've been talking for a minute. We only got through 2 fights. All right, so and we're not going to go through the prelims so much, but so let's go ahead and just get this talk out the way because we got to talk about inhalers and poor regulation. Greg Hardy wins a unanimous decision against Ben Sosoli. Yeah, from an entertainment standpoint, this was not a fight that really made any of us happy. I don't think. And this is not getting into the obvious controversies of Greg Hardy and him just being in the UFC period. I'm open to having that conversation, but let's talk about the fight itself first. So, yeah, the thing is, Greg Hardy he's still clearly a developing fighter, and he's developing at a pretty good pace. I think. I think he looks okay as a fighter. This is just Sosoli was he did something that the other fighters that Greg Hardy has faced didn't do, and that's he fought back. Yes, he didn't roll over and die. With the exception of Alan Crowder, like everyone just curled up in a ball and died when Greg Hardy looked at them. And that's not what Sosoli did. Sosoli went in there, bit on his mouthpiece, and tried to get it in with him. And landed some good shots, mixed up with the body shots as well. Like you want to say he landed a couple jabs to the body. They were perfectly timed. And things that just seemed to disrupt Hardy. Like I think Hardy went in this thinking he was going to steamroll him. He was corrected very quickly because it wasn't easy for him to use superior athleticism. Like this is when things started getting tougher. And I thought Juan Adams would have been the guy to give him this lesson, but Sosoli ended up being the guy to remind you, like, hey, while being a fantastic athlete is a great thing to have in mixed martial arts, well, that ain't all it is. You need more than that. So Sosoli mixed up the technical aspects. He mixed up the striking. He didn't let himself get trapped against the fence. He didn't cower. Like he just kept at him. And that went a long way. It went a long way. And I saw some scorecards out there for Sosoli, and I'm not mad at those. I actually stopped scoring this fight after the inhaler thing. I was just wondering, what the hell are we doing here? So yes, I'm about to go on a rant about this. Please tell me what the fuck was going on with an inhaler. Now, I understand asthma is a serious thing, and people have all sorts of athletes have asthma and whatnot. And yes, you need your medicine, and yes, therapeutic use exemptions, fantastic. Do that. But when you step in that cage, that shit does not matter. When you step in the cage, you don't get your medicine. You get in there and fight. And see, the asthma medication, I'm going to screw up the pronunciation of the name, so I'm not even going to try to name that medicine right now. I was trying to learn about this as the fights were going on, so my knowledge is a bit spotty on the specifics of this. But yeah, athletes of all kinds have asthma, and yes, you need it to live. You need to function properly, and probably need it in practices and everything. When you step in the cage, it does not matter. When you step in the cage, you are there without your medicine, without your support animal, without any of those things that you need through your normal course of the day, because this is not the normal course of a day. This is a fight. So let's look at some prior history, and I'm sure there are other examples, but the one example I know of is Louis Resto versus Billy Collins Jr. It was a boxing match that took place, I believe, in the mid-'80s. I want to say the mid-'80s. Now, in this fight is mostly known for Panama Joe, who was Louis Resto's coach. And he was a very famous coach. He low-key is still coaching people now, apparently, like under the radar, but it's a whole nother story. He gave Resto loaded wraps loaded with like plaster of Paris. Also took away some of the padding from his gloves. So when he was fighting Billy Collins, and he's like hitting him with bricks, essentially. And this took place over the course of the full, I think it was a 12-round fight that this took place. Now, going into the last round, obviously both gentlemen are tired. Resto is tired. He's unloaded a lot of shots. He's thrown a lot. He's tired. And he's taken a lot of punishment himself. So he takes a sip of some water, and he comes out in that next round, that last round, with a flurry. And he comes out there like a bat out of hell and does work. Ends up winning the fight. Well, that water was spiked with asthma medication to open up the airways, to essentially combat your fatigue. Oh, combat fatigue. Yeah, you see what I did there? So, yeah, it can be a performance-enhancing drug. Therefore, probably should not be available for use in between rounds. Probably shouldn't be. And that is not to say that fighters who have asthma shouldn't be there, because they should, but they shouldn't be there with an inhaler. No one should. The problem with this is that the potential for abuse. Remember how TRT got grossly abused. TRT is a perfectly understandable medical treatment, but fighters took advantage of these TUEs. So you have a guy who's got muscles going up to his damn ears. His traps are up to his ears, and he's low in testosterone. Okay, fam, yeah, whatever. You got a guy who's got an 8-pack and also weighs 250 pounds, but you need TRT. Yeah, sure thing, buddy. You know how that was grossly abused. Imagine the gross abuse if a medication that is designed to open up your airways, to let you breathe better, that can give you a boost in stamina, is available cage side. Like, I don't think you have to be a doctor or a scientist to put 2 and 2 together and say this doesn't make any damn sense. So, when this broadcast is over, I will do a deep dive into the laws about this. I've seen all sorts of debates popping up on Twitter between media guys. I respect some of them that I'm friends with about this, and some arguments and whatnot. And I can't wait to dive in those arguments and really research this. But if common sense is what we're ruling on right now, common sense says you do not have a medication like that available cage side. And if your asthma is that bad to where you can't perform in a mixed martial arts contest, I'm sorry, you probably shouldn't be in a mixed martial arts contest. Now, it's crazy, too. It wasn't that the corner just snuck it or something like that, or they just asked some dude who was just standing there and say, hey, can I take this? All right, fam, and just let him do it. It wasn't like that. Apparently, they asked a commission official. Commission official said yes. Whoa, I'm telling you, this is a no contest if you ever heard of one. This is a no contest if you ever heard of one. Tommaso Mark, excellent point here, saying, imagine overing with an inhaler. Exactly my point. Juice X saying, hey, buddy, the Hardy Sosoli fight has been overturned to a no contest per Kevin Aioli, and then the UFC confirmed. Fantastic. Like this, the fact that this even got this far, like, that's nuts. The moment he took 2 puffs of that inhaler, somebody should have been waving that fight off. That's unacceptable. At least at the end, conventional wisdom prevailed. Sosoli doesn't have a loss on his record. I'm sure he'll get another go in the UFC as is deserved for taking this fight. So, yeah, I guess all's well that ends well. But I'm just really curious as to why the UFC is just so invested in Greg Hardy. Like, I get it. Yes, he was a former NFL player. Yes, people on ESPN might want to look at him somewhere. But I mean, every time this guy fights, it seems like it's something else. At what point do you blame him? And yeah, now I'm gonna get into the bag about him uh, competing period in the UFC. Was anyone else really taken back by the level of reframing they're trying to do around the image of Greg Hardy? The commentary team seemed very focused on that. Like, oh man, he's been through so much. Yeah, maybe some of it was self-inflicted, but like, come on, man, come on. He's shown himself to have repeated bouts of antisocial, dangerous, knucklehead ass behavior. So when he does some knucklehead ass shit, don't be surprised. And someone who's never truly like, at least in the public eye, like made amends for that knucklehead ass shit either. So I'm not understanding why this need to reform his image. Is the curiosity about NFL players in mixed martial arts just that overwhelming that we just have to, it just has to happen? I mean, we've seen it before, maybe not one of Greg Hardy's uh, caliber in the NFL, but I mean, we've had former NFL players in the UFC. We've had pro wrestlers in mixed martial arts in the UFC. Like we've had these things. We've had these other sort of freak athletes in mixed martial arts in some way, shape, or form. So why is this guy so special? And this guy of all guys. I think back to when there was a time when Shaquille O'Neal was trying to fight in the UFC, and apparently he had been training MMA for some years and has always been a big fan of the sport and everything, and UFC wouldn't give him a fight. If you're gonna try to put these world class athletes of other sports into mixed martial arts, why not a guy like Shaq? Yeah, I'm sure Shaq is not without his controversies in some way, shape, or form. But as far as I know, he never beat no woman. As far as I know, he never threw on a bed of AK-47s. As far as I know, he never like got into fights with his teammates to get booted off the Cowboys after getting an improbable second chance in the NFL. So are they hitching the wagon on the wrong guy? I think so. I think so. He might develop into a fantastic fighter. He just might. But tonight, it's a no contest, buddy. You used some medication that you shouldn't have had cage side in between rounds. No contest. So how many fights has Greg Hardy had in the UFC now? Is it 4? Is it 4 fights he's had? Let me double check this. Oh, I'm also saying who the hell would fight Shaq? He was trying to fight Hungman Choi. Actually, if I'm remembering that correctly, he was trying to fight Hungman Choi, so that would have been interesting. Now, okay, so yes, 4 fights in the UFC. 2 of them have some sort of controversy to them. First fight, he gets DQ'd with the kneeing Alan Crowder to the head, as at least in my estimation, he was losing his temper, getting frustrated, and then kneed him in the head. That's the way I saw it. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what it appeared to be from my eyes. Dmitry Smolikov, a guy they had to dig the bottom of the barrel for, who previously washed out of the UFC and earned his way back because Greg Hardy was there and they needed somebody he can beat. In the meantime, he had defeated like 2 guys who had sub 500 records. Okay. Juan Adams, nothing bad to say about Juan Adams. Just didn't go his way that night. So, is this worth the investment at this point? Is it really worth the investment? Do we have to go through this every time the UFC is on ESPN? And not ESPN plus, ESPN. Is that what needs to happen every time? Yeah. So Whatever. All right, let me run through some of these comments because I'm sure there's some comments about this situation. Rob saying Greg Hardy is only brought in the UFC to be a villain, nothing more. You know what? Fair point. I mean, because you see me getting riled up. If you follow me on Twitter, you've probably seen things I've said about this same situation. And if you watch the trenches and any other shows that I do, I'm sure you heard some of my thoughts on this. But it's working. I'm talking about him, ain't I? We're talking about him. We're giving him attention. We're invested in this story, whether he's the good guy or the bad guy. We are there tuning in, watching. So I guess hypocrisy at its finest. What can I say? Let's see here. Tommaso saying, I'm willing to acknowledge that both the Crowder and Sosoli fight, he was winning until the knucklehead shit. Yeah, I'm okay with that too. I'm perfectly okay with that. The Crowder fight, though, it seemed like the tide was about to change. It seemed like he was getting into a little bit of rough spot that he hadn't experienced and kind of freaked. Rob saying, I feel like the UFC has become more like the WWE these days. Yeah, that's a fair assessment. I mean, we can go down that rabbit hole a lot, and I know maybe we'll do a show about that, Rob. And in fact, next time I do a show with callers and stuff, call in. We will talk about that. Definitely would love to deep dive into that, but we'll get way too sidetracked. Okay, let's look at the rest of this card and see where, because those top three fights really kind of took over my brain. I mean, how did I forget about Joe Lauzon? Joe motherfucking Lauzon defeats Jonathan Pierce in the first round, a minute and 33 seconds into the round, ground and pound stoppage there. I think I'm not alone in saying, man, I thought Lauzon was going to get washed out there. Lauzon has not looked good for a long time, for quite some time. Like me, I'm scrolling and see when was the last time he looked good. Like until today, he was on a 3-fight losing streak. He had the split decision over Marcin Held, split decision loss to Jim Miller. He alternated wins and losses for years, since 2015, he was alternating wins and losses until this 3-fight losing streak that he snapped tonight. Like Joe Lauzon's had it rough, and it's not that he just lost some of those fights, man. He got beat down. He got whooped up on a lot of these fights, and he's taken so much damage in his career. Lauzon is a smart dude. He was a former IT professional, so he's a really just smart guy. Owns a successful gym. Has fighters under his tutelage that are doing well for themselves. It just didn't seem like it made any sense for him to still be fighting. But I hope this is the last one. I hope he goes out on top, a dominant victory in his hometown. I doubt it because fighters never really go out on that number. They always come back. So, yeah, man, I guess, it was a great moment for him and a good guy who seems to, he really deserves that, man. And let's talk about the way that fight ended, where he got him in that reverse half Nelson, the way he just he used that forearm to keep his head in place, and he just using the floor and his forearm to kind of pin his head down, and then just firing away the ground and pound. Man, that was some big brother shit right there. That is some big brother. Let you know what time it is. Let you know which one of y'all is the big brother sort of thing right there. That was crazy. So it was good that he got that moment in Boston. I just hope that it's just that moment and that's that. All right, now what else we got? So you guys might have to help me with this one because I seem to have some technical issues watching it. I tried to watch some of the replay, but anyway, Macy Barber runs through Jillian Robertson 3 minutes, 4 seconds into the first round. I did not see much of this fight. Like my screen was acting up, but internet was doing something stupid and I missed it. So I'm actually on the timeline seeing people talking about, oh man, Macy Barber destroyed her. I'm like, what's going on? Because what I was watching was the introductions. the fighters were still being introduced. So I don't know what the hell was going on. Then I try to see, like, am I behind and not watching this live, or is my feed a couple minutes late, or what's going on? And then it just crapped out for a few minutes, and I just missed the whole damn thing. I just missed it all. So I guess the one thing that stands out, one, Macy Barber has some serious power, just some serious power for flyweight, and those hands are going to be a problem. She is someone who is rapidly developing as well. I think the last fight, was that that quiet girl. That girl is so quiet. Now, why am I forgetting her name? She just fought last week. Somebody in the chat is gonna throw this at me. JJ Aldridge. JJ Aldridge, yes. When she fought JJ Aldridge, you start seeing some holes in her game. You start seeing where she needs to work on certain aspects. And she is developing, like she's closing those holes. Now let's talk about the PVZ call out. Paige Van Zandt. She seems to be really obsessed with calling out Paige Van Zandt. Why? I mean, I guess because the name that she has, like, she's this woman who is famous. While not necessarily the most active fighter, she's famous. So there's that. At this point, why are you calling out PVZ other than the fame, other than the idea that you might be able to boost your popularity with, by beating her? Because what doesn't make sense to me is this one, like Macy Barber is blazing her own trail. And this is flyweight. This is not a very stacked division. Like, you can get to a title shot, I think, fairly quickly at flyweight. You put on performances like this. Like, who? Like, did she? The Macy Barber could be going at Jessica Eye. I'm saying she could fight a Liz Carmouche or something. Like, Paige Van Zandt, really? Yeah, I think that's trash. And then also too, Mike Skills is trash on that. Mike Skills is trash. I'm sorry, fam. Trash. Tom also saying Macy needs to work on her striking defense. She's hittable, but other than that, I like her. Yeah, striking defense is one of those things that tends to develop later on in a fighter's career. That's the young upstart that's just blazing out there and hits hard. Very, very seldom are they very defensive minded. Also, Macy seems to believe beating Paige would upgrade her popularity, but to me, no one would be mentioning Paige if she didn't. Macy is so far ahead of her. Exactly. It's kind of like, from just a pure popularity standpoint, I get it, but really, you can get the popularity by fighting fighters that actually make sense for you to fight at this point. Paige Van Zandt, I'd honestly be very surprised if Paige Van Zandt fights again. I don't see why she would. I really don't see it. I'm saying Barber versus Antonina Shevchenko should be next. Not mad at that at all. Like this, there are levels to this progression. Yeah, and Tom also saying she's ranked ahead of her. So I'm just PVZ call outs. Just, I'm sorry. And if you're gonna do it, make it sound cooler. Like, that was pretty bad. Like, yeah, I mean, even if you went at Andrea Lee or something like that, would make a lot more sense to me. But Paige ain't even ranked in this division. Is she even ranked at all? Yeah, she's not ranked in strawweight or flyweight. Like, let it go. Let it go. That does nothing for you. Like, this, to me, that's like the Yair Rodriguez versus BJ Penn thing, where it's like, we didn't need to see that. That means nothing. That proves absolutely nothing. It's just a name, a popular name to lead out the slaughter. I can't rock with it. I can't rock with that one bit. So let's see what else we got. Looks like my computer decided to do something stupid. Yeah, but you know what? I think we'll wrap it up too with the main card opener. Darren Stewart gets a split decision over Deron Winn. I was leaning toward Winn. I gave this fight 29-28 for Deron Winn, and I'm not mad at Darren Stewart winning it. That was a very, very close fight. Fight that was very tough to score. I think what I find more concerning is one, Deron Winn's chin. Like, yeah, he can take a shot, but that ain't gonna last forever. And I think I voiced these same concerns in the Eric Spicely fight. He took way too many punches, and it just overall, I think overall it's just a bad day for Deron Winn. Even if he got the victory, I would say this was a bad day for him. You miss weight, and you have tremendous holes in your game exposed. I think he really needs to do some serious evaluation as to what the trajectory of his career is going to look like, because he missed weight for middleweight. The guy's like 2 inches shorter than me. Obviously a lot thicker than me, but still, I don't. I will say at least he was very serious about his wrestling game. Like, he kind of abandoned that in the Spicely fight for long stretches. He didn't this time, but it just wasn't enough. It simply was not enough. In fact, we're even Darren Stewart got a takedown on him against the cage. He got reversed in position not too long afterward, but he did land some good ground and pound and got a takedown over a decorated wrestler like Wynn. So, I see gas tank issues. I see defensive issues. I see his entries need to be polished. And granted, he is still a developing fighter. So this is the time to show those holes, and it's time to fix those holes. But I think one thing for sure, Wynn needs to make some tough decisions about where his future lies as far as weight class is concerned. When he made it wasn't his MMA debut. When I first saw him was at Golden Boy MMA. I think it's when most of us first saw him was at Golden Boy MMA, where he fought Tom Lawler at light heavyweight. Obviously grossly undersized for that weight class. Goes to middleweight in the UFC. Grossly undersized at middleweight. This is a guy who probably should be at welterweight. And even then, he's still going to be the short guy. He's still going to be the shorter guy with the shorter reach. And he's going to have to really try his damnedest to get on the inside, close the distance, and employ his wrestling game. He's going to have to, be more like his mentor, Daniel Cormier. He's got to be more like Kelvin Gastelum, like those guys who are the short, stocky build that are undersized at the weight classes that they belong in. Yeah, man, I don't. I just kind of was. I thought Deron Wynn would have more than that, and perhaps that's my fault for forgetting that he is a developing fighter. But he comes so highly touted by such an incredible camp at AKA, and you've seen him handle a veteran like Tom Lawler. You've seen him battle through some adversity against Eric Spicely. I just thought maybe I felt that if he won this fight tonight, especially if he won it impressively, that the rocket ship would go on his back and the UFC would fully be promoting him. But the good thing about some of these fights, if you learn you're not ready, you're not ready. So it is time for him to go back to the drawing board and figure out some things. And I think one of those things to figure out is his weight, and not just because he missed weight, which is nuts to me that he missed 185. But I'm normally the one preaching that guys shouldn't be cutting weight, but he doesn't look to be in the most optimal shape, if you know what I mean. So maybe a move to 170 makes a lot of sense for him. It's at least worth a try. It's at least worth a try in camp, or in a mock camp, to just see what his body feels like, within range, to safely water cut the rest. Just my take on that. So let's see here now. Where are we? There were some cool things that happened on the prelims. Submission win from Charles Rosa. Molly McCann, Diana Belbita fight was, yeah. Sean Woodson looked fantastic against Kyle Bochniak. Sean Woodson looked absolutely fantastic, so poised, and shot selection was so nice. And he looked fantastic. I can't wait to see this guy develop. Randy Costa smokes Boston Salmon. Sean Brady wins a pretty tough fight against Court McGee. Court McGee impressed me. He did more than I thought he would in that fight. Brendan Allen with his submission win over Kevin Holland. That was a fantastic performance by Brendan Allen. That was an amazing fight too. Both guys with these wicked grappling exchanges. Allen absorbed a lot of damage on the ground and face bloody and everything, but he still managed to pull out the win. And Tanner Bosser gets a decision win over Daniel Spitz and annihilates the I want to say it was his left knee in the process. His knee looked like a raw lamb chop. It looked crazy. All right, so let me go through this chat. I know it's some things in this chat that I probably missed or skipped because I was trying to keep the flow going. Cole actually he had this. Cole Shelton, my colleague over at Sherdog.com, said, "And why are we both shit at picking fights? I think I got to be like 30 to 40% over the last month." Yo, I'm so with you on that one. Let me see here. I picked the main event right. I picked the co-main event right. I picked the Hardy fight correctly, although that's now no contest. Was wrong about Lozon. I did pick Barber. I was wrong about the Darren Stewart Deron Wynn fight. This was the best fight pick night I've had in like 4 or 5 weeks. It's been abysmal. It's been really bad. Picking fights is never an exact science, at least for me. It never is, but I think as long as the picks are based on some sort of intelligent reasoning, like, all right, I can live with it. I'm okay with getting a fight wrong if I can intelligently explain what was supposed to happen based on the style matchup. And if something different from that, cool, surprise me. I like surprises. Actually, I don't like surprises. Anyway, yeah. So Rob, I'm saying I hate the next week's fights are at 5 a.m. on the West Coast. Oh, that sucks. I mean, I normally wake up at like 6:37, no matter what. So I'll probably will. I'll probably be up. Like I just wake up a little bit early and watch. Or maybe I'll miss the first couple fights, but whatever. At least that way, we got the rest of the day. We got the rest of the day to do what we do and not be slaves to the TV and to our computers and stuff about this. So I might try to do a walk of shame. We'll see if I've fully awakened. I might. We'll see. I'm actually supposed to be moving next week, so hopefully my internet and everything will be set up and I can go ahead and proceed as normal. Let's see what else we got. More calls for Weidman to retire, and when is Aldo going to fight again? I don't know, Tommaso. I don't know. Let's see here. Is it possible? Carry giant squid lip. Man, that name always gets me. Is it possible Hardy's plan was to go to a decision just for the experience? He seemed like he was really running. That's definitely a possibility. He could have been doing that. That would not surprise me at all. And that's definitely like a boxing mentality to take to just get rounds in. We don't see a lot of that in MMA, but that does make sense because he has very, very little cage time. I mean, most of his fights have ended in the first round, so it really would make sense for him to want more rounds in, more experience in real combat as opposed to like just simulating it in training. So it's definitely a possibility there. Either way, it doesn't look like we're getting rid of Greg Hardy anytime soon. Okay. So I think we'll go and wrap things up for that. Now, first, want to say thank you. Appreciate all of you for joining the chat, keeping the conversation moving. Also, remember, please like and subscribe. You like and subscribe helps me out a lot as I try to grow this channel, try to just provide some content and just get some shit up off my chest, man. I can't write it all down for SureDog.com, so I gotta say it just a little bit every time. So what else? The good, bad, and the ugly, the post fight column. I might start writing that as soon as I get off the air here, or I'll write it in the morning. But either way, it's going to be live Saturday. It will be live tomorrow. So go ahead and check that out for some quick post-fight thoughts about UFC Boston. And what else? The mailbag column, Ask Ant. I wrote that this morning, actually, and submitted that. So I'd expect that to be published in the morning as well. So double dose of my work coming up. What else we got? The panel discussion show Unleashed will be on the Walkout Network on this channel Tuesday. We record that on Monday nights. It should be available Tuesday around noon, 1 o'clock West Coast time, something like that. So we will we'll have that for you. I got to finalize who the fourth panelist is going to be. If I'm remembering the schedule correctly, I think it's going to be Jason Burgos. I think so. If not, it'll be somebody else you like. So, yeah, and what else? Oh, yeah, the Trenches, the SureDog Live chat, that will be coming to you Wednesday. That'll be coming to you Wednesday on the SureDog.com YouTube channel. So, you know what you got to do. Like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends, and stay beautiful, stay positive, and no matter what, you've got to stay sexy. I will see you when I see you. Peace.